Hello and welcome to our Bible study today. We're looking at the wonderful book of Psalms, and today we're looking at Psalm 37. It's the longest that we've had since Psalm 18. So without further ado, don't get into a rage because of people who deal badly. Don't get passionate because of people who do evil. Because like grass, they fade quickly. Like green plants, they wither. Trust in Yahweh and do good. Dwell in the country and pasture on truthfulness. Revel in Yahweh, and he'll give you the requests of your heart. Commit your way to Yahweh. Trust in him and he'll act. He'll bring out faithfulness for you like light, exercise of authority for you like midday. Be still before Yahweh and wait patiently for him. Don't get into a rage with the person who makes his way successful and the individual who acts on his strategies. Let go of anger. Abandon wrath. Don't get into a rage. Only do something bad. Because people who deal badly will be cut off. For those who hope in Yahweh, they'll enter into possession of the country. Yet a little while, and there'll be no faithless person. You'll consider his place, and there'll be no one. The humble, they'll enter into possession of the country and revel in abundance of well-being. The faithless person schemes against the faithful and grinds his teeth against them. The Lord makes fun of him because he's seen that his day will come. Faithless people have drawn the sword and directed their bow to make the humble and needy fall, to slaughter people who are upright in their way. Their sword will come into their own hearts, their bows will break. Better is the little of the faithful than the great mass of the faithless, because the arms of the faithless will break, but Yahweh upholds the faithful. Yahweh will acknowledge the days of people of integrity, and their domain will last permanently. They won't be shamed at a time when things are bad, and in days of famine they'll be full, because faithless people will perish, Yahweh's enemies. They'll come to a finish like the most valuable of pastures come to a finish in smoke. The faithless person borrows and cannot make good, but the faithful person is gracious and gives. Because the people blessed by him will enter into possession of the country, but the people slighted by him will be cut off. A man's steps are established by Yahweh when he delights in his way. When he falls, he's not thrown headlong because Yahweh supports with his hand. I was young, and yes, I'm old, but I haven't seen a faithful person abandoned or his offspring seeking bread. All day he's gracious and lends, and his offspring are a blessing. Depart from what's bad and do good and dwell permanently, because Yahweh is loyal to the exercise of authority and doesn't abandon people committed to him. They are kept watch over permanently, but the offspring of the faithless are cut off. Faithful people will enter into possession of the country and dwell forever and ever. The mouth of the faithful person murmurs smartness, and his tongue speaks with authority. His God's instruction is in his mind. His steps don't slip. The faithless person watches for the faithful and seeks to put him to death. Yahweh doesn't abandon him into his hand and doesn't declare him in the wrong when entering into judgment about him. Hope in Yahweh and keep his way. He'll raise you up so that you enter into possession of the country when the faithless are cut off. You'll see. I've seen a faithless man, violent, arousing himself like a verdant native tree, but he passed on. There he was gone. I sought him, and he couldn't be found. Keep watch on the person of integrity. See the upright person. There is a future for the man of peace. But rebels are annihilated all at once. The future of the faithless is cut off. The deliverance of the faithful comes from Yahweh and their stronghold in time of pressure. Yahweh helps them and enables them to survive. He enables them to survive from the faithless and delivers them because they take shelter with him. This is the word of the Lord. Well, there's a lot of repetition in this psalm to help people to memorize it. But do please bear in mind, as we've said so often in relation to the Bible, that it does use hyperbole. It does use exaggeration to make a point. And sometimes I think things are lost a bit in translation. It's also notable, this psalm, because it's one of the few psalms where O Lord or O God is not found, because the psalmist is addressing his fellow believers. This is not a prayer or praise, but instruction and exhortation, and the teaching is very practical. It's a style that's very like Proverbs, and it's also quoted by Jesus, of course, in the Beatitudes, in the Sermon on the Mount, the meek shall inherit the earth. The faithful are described as the meek, the righteous, the upright, and the blameless, not in the sense of being sinless, which obviously is not the case, but people of integrity, whilst the faithless care nothing for God. The instruction to do something or not to do something is not an order, but a reasoned and affectionate encouragement. So how should we react to the fact that often the faithless seem to succeed despite not caring for God at all? Well, not with fretting or anger, says the psalmist. We should not play the same game. Rather, we should cultivate faithfulness. This is very much a psalm for people who feel powerless and hopeless. And helpless. But obviously not those who feel hopeless. Of course, it doesn't matter or doesn't mean that we shouldn't be angry about injustice, but rather we should focus on our relationship with God. We should identify with the Lord's people and develop confidence in him. The trump card is that the righteous know who holds the future, and the flourishing of the wicked is only temporary. A just outcome is certain. The difference in verses 12 to 20 from that first part of the psalm is that generally, although there's repetition in the first section, the wicked are actively plotting against the righteous. Again, it's the Lord who holds the future. We should not even think of avenging ourselves, says the psalmist, because we'd only get it wrong. This is God's way, and we should leave that to him, who will get it exactly right. The wicked borrow and don't repay, says the psalmist, which leads us obviously to look back to Deuteronomy chapter 28, which tells us that amongst God's blessings will be the ability to lend, and amongst the threatened curses are a need to borrow. The final section draws it all together in verses 32 to 40. We're reminded about the hostility of the wicked to the righteous. The righteous wait patiently on the Lord, who will exalt them. The wicked flourish, but will wither. There is a future for the person of peace, but the future of the wicked will be cut off. So for the devout, the psalm would have been true in bad times and in good, and they'd be happy with the blessings of the time in view of the solid joys and lasting treasure to come. For the young brought up in a loving home, does it get shot to pieces by the hard facts of real life, or in the end, is the child confidence right? Well, the kingdom of heaven belongs to such of these as these, of course. But in the end, this is a psalm about waiting and patience and hope, and about the long view. Verse 5, commit your way to Yahweh, trust in him and he will act. And that gets echoed by Paul and Peter. So in 1 Thessalonians 5, we find Paul saying, the one who calls you is faithful and he will act. And in 1 Peter 5, we find, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. The God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little, will himself restore you. So blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Amongst the solid joys of heaven, we'll be able to look back and realize that every aspect of this psalm came true at the right time and in the best way as we come into possession of a whole new world. More tomorrow when we look at Psalm 38.